Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is your host, Bob Gumbs here with the Concerned Forum. And I hope that everyone's having a pleasant weekend so far. I hope the weather is nice. It's a funny thing about taping the show. Now, this is being taped Tuesday evening. So we'll see now just how the weather has turned out to be when you're actually watching this. Because as I said, this is being done Tuesday the 17th. So we'll see what happens. Listen, I wanted to speak with everyone this evening, or I should say this afternoon, about where we stand right now as a country. And I think that we, most people will agree that we're in kind of a bad way. And it's bad, it's sad when the chief executive takes up all the oxygen in the room. That's the person right now that's taking up, all the news coverage, really just about everything. But, sometimes there comes a time when you have to get political, when you have to be involved, because this person, this chief executive, that's the one controlling your life. And I mean, I can hear some folks out there now, oh, well, he's full of it. No politician is going to control my life. Well, wrong answer, recruit. Politicians do control our lives. That's the nature of the system that we live under. And because of that fact, we owe it to ourselves and to the future to try and put people in there that are of the best caliber. Now, I'm not saying, to be president or to run for Congress, you have to have a PhD and teach law at Harvard or Yale. I'm not saying that. I don't think the founders of this country actually meant that. To me, what that's always meant is that you try to select people for public office that are essentially decent people. And when I say decent, I'm not saying that this man or this woman has to strictly be or follow my moral standards. Okay, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the person or the people that we select, that they have a respect for our basic document. Okay, they have respect for the message. The message being the Declaration of Independence, okay, and the guidelines being the United States Constitution. Now, when you have a president that's publicly going to talk about, there should be some kind of censorship on the media because they don't like the news, you got a problem with that. And see, these are the type of things that he was saying before he got selected president. And I know somebody out there is noticing right now, Trump was elected. Well, actually, no, not really. Okay? He is our president, just like Bush Jr. was our president in his first term. By means of a constitutional fluke, that came about as a result of the slavery issue. And when we start going into history, American history, I'll explain that more fully. But yeah, it was a constitutional fluke, and that's why, by the way, and again, I'm not going to try to delve too deeply into it, but that's why I believe that the Electoral College needs to be disbanded once and for all. Because essentially what that was a cry by some of the southern states to basically be able to throw their weight around in the national election. And that's why they came up with the Electoral College idea. See, at the beginning, excuse me, at the beginning of the Republic, the southern states, they didn't have as many white male residents as the northern and mid-Atlantic states had. Had a lot of black folks, but they did not have that many eligible white males who could vote. And so they were afraid somehow that they were not going to be carry the same influence, okay, that the other states like New York or Massachusetts would carry. And which to me, I've always found that kind of ironic and sadly funny, because for the first, what would you say? I would say for about maybe the first 75, almost 100 years, let's see, 1789 to about 1860, Southerners basically dominated the federal government. War departments, back then it was not the Department of Defense, it was the War Department, which quite frankly it should have maintained that name, but that's another story. State Department, all the major departments were Southerners. And what, the first 7 presidents, with the exception of John Adams, were Southerners. Virginia, what's Virginia called? That's when Virginia, quote unquote, was Virginia. That's when Virginia was a red, what we would nowadays call a red state. That is no longer the case with Virginia. At best, you could say it's a purple state nowadays. But at that time, Virginia was a thoroughly red state, and it was called what? It was called the mother of presidents. So that gives you an idea about how the southern states, the red states, were able to control this country from the beginning by the manipulation of black Americans. And that is how the Electoral College came into being. But anyway, like I said, Donald did not win outright. He lost the popular vote, which is something that annoys the hell out of him. Too bad, Donald. But he lost by 3 million votes. He also lost because a lot of my associates and some of your far left parties, or put it this way, extremist parties, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, or the Liberty Party, or whatever the hell they call themselves. You know, these people that think that we don't need any type of government whatsoever. And they either voted, I forgot the name of that lady that ran for the Green Party for president, the one that was having dinner with Putin over in Moscow, which I don't think was a very smart thing for her to do. I'm quite sure the heads of the Green Party will probably agree with me by now. but they voted for her. They voted for that the other two guys in that Libertarian Party, one of which did not know where the hell we were fighting at in, what was it, Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan. I mean, he had no idea what the hell was going on in the Middle East. Or that's how he came across. You know, folks voted for them, one of those parties, or, unfortunately, a lot of people did not vote. And one thing that this election should have taught everyone, the danger of what happens when you say, the hell with it, I'm not going to vote. You know, well, a lot of people did that. And quite frankly, if all the people who voted for the green ticket or for the libertarian ticket had went ahead and voted the Democratic ticket, we would not have Donald Trump in the White House. And if all the people that just didn't want to be bothered, some because they didn't see Obama's name on the ticket, they didn't see him running. Well, Obama's not running, so the hell with it. I'm not going to vote. And you got Donald Trump. Now, those three groups of people, someone needs to ask them, are you happy with the results of what you and people like you have given us? We know for a fact one young lady, one very brave, very kind young lady, was murdered by American Nazis and the KKK at that rally that the Nazis had in Charlottesville. The first major one. The really big one where they were marching around with the torches and marching on synagogues. Yeah. Well, that's a direct result of Donald Trump being selected president. Or I should say being selected by the Electoral College for the White House. So as all this hell that this country is going through continues to unfold itself, I hope that you can look back and say that you are actually proud of your decision to put a public Nazi sympathizer in the White House. Now, I know that a lot of people in the Green Party, and I speak about the Green Party because I used to be a member of the Green Party. This was sometime after my wife had passed away, and I had come back to New York with my son, and I was looking at getting involved politically, and at that time, the Green Party appeared to be something new and different to me. I really wasn't around New York too much for the genesis of the Green Party because I was, in the military and overseas. But when I came back up here, which was, I don't know, we're talking about 90, I don't know, 2000, something like that. 2001, 2002. And it seemed like a good idea. Now, oddly enough, I would say most of their platform I agree with. I truly do. I think it's the way that their packaging I have a serious problem with. Their outlook on national politics. I think that one of the big problems that we have though, on the left is that our heart is in I'm not doing this on purpose, folks, I swear. But our heart is in San Francisco, and in New York and LA. And many of us really don't have a grasp of national politics. And that's because many of us here have really spent no time interacting in the South and in the Southwest. Actually living amongst people from that neck of the woods. We don't have an active military draft right now. And folks, if someone would have asked me what mistakes were made from the 60s and early 70s, I'd have to say that I really don't see too many, quite frankly. I think that politically, in terms of activism, I think times were much better. However, I think one big mistake, which has hurt this country, is that we stopped the draft, okay? Nixon, in order to shut everybody up, he just shelved the draft. Now, the draft is still there. And if things keep going on their present course, I do believe it will be dusted off and put back into action. But we don't have a draft right now. And I think that's a sad thing. Now, I know we got people out there right now probably throwing chairs at the TV. Let me tell you why. Because one of the reasons why our politics is so screwed up, it has gotten so, I'm from, Arkansas, you're from Massachusetts, and it's like watching two people speaking a foreign language at each other. And the reason for that is because we don't come in contact, really, with each other. Even those of us who are fortunate enough to go to college, right? We're going to wind up usually going to a college or university within the general area, okay, where we live. And since we don't have a regular, functioning draft, we don't really come in contact with each other. So we don't know each other. One of the reasons for the success, and technically and legally, it was a success, and I'm talking about the civil rights movement in terms of getting stuff through Congress, establishing programs. That did help until, we had the backlash, which brought Nixon in. But one of the reasons why it was so successful is because of the fact that you had the chance to interact with people. I'll never forget it. I wasn't drafted. I knew what my draft number was, but I wasn't drafted because I went in when I was 17. So I beat the draft. And, one day I'm out there digging foxholes and filling up sandbags next to a guy that had finished law school. And he had gotten drafted. And he didn't want to be an officer. So he wanted to do his time as an enlisted man. And he did. And he was in that same line of people digging sandbags. The next guy was a kid from Arkansas, a white guy from Arkansas. And he just got a GED, barely, right after he had gotten out of boot camp. And we had the guy who was the fellow from law school, he was from Boston. So you got a kid from the so-called projects, the inner city, a kid who just finished law school, and you got a kid that was, I don't want to say a hillbilly or anything, but he was like an Appalachian type guy from Arkansas, which I know that's not, Arkansas is not in Appalachia, but that same kind of culture, basically. And we're there together. We're soldiers. We're doing our thing. And I think that meant a hell of a lot. If you look at a lot of the movies made in the 40s, for example, and you always got your kid from Brooklyn, right? And then you got your kid from either South Carolina or Georgia. Now, these are white guys, and I understand that aspect of it because the military, unfortunately, it just began experimenting with desegregation in World War II. But the main point is that you see people, different economic levels. You had the rich kid who's been drafted. You had the kid who never had nothing. And these guys are like in the same unit. And that type of thinking, right? The idea that we're in this mess together, believe it or not, that did a lot in terms of programs to help the safety net, because these guys, they had a chance to understand what life was like for the other guy. See? Take a look at your Congress and, who made up your Congress in the 50s, all the way up until the late 60s, even going into the early 70s. Most of those guys had some kind of, they had military service. So they had a chance to come in contact with other people from, different areas of the country and different cultural and economic, resources. You don't have that now. What is it? I think less than 2%, or was it less than 1% of the American people have any contact whatsoever with the military, i.e. they served in the military, they have a relative in the military, or they know someone in the military. Less than 1%. And that is not good for democracy. And I know we don't have a full-fledged democracy, so let me say democratic republic. But you folks get my drift. That's not good for a society where, quote unquote, the people are supposed to rule. And I think that that's something that we need to get back to. Now, what you have an emphasis on how separate we are, how disunited we are. And again, I repeat, that is dangerous. That is fertile ground for your Ku Klux Klan and for your Nazi party. Now, those clowns, talking about the last 50 years or so, they've always been around. And see, if I was Trump, I would be ashamed. But of course, Trump is the type of person that he's not all there. As we say in the Navy, he's not carrying the full sea bag, right? That's why you have so many psychiatrists now going against their custom, because ever since the '64 election, there was a thing that, okay, you guys really worked to embarrass Barry Goldwater because he was a conservative and a conservative Republican. And people were scared of Barry. I'm not going to lie about that, because he was the one that brought up the idea of using nuclear weapons in Vietnam. So he kind of brought that on himself, all right? But ever since that election, psychiatrists have said, well, look, we're not going to diagnose presidential candidates just by watching on TV, watching them on television. But now, many psychiatrists are standing up and they're saying, well, wait a minute, we have an obligation. If we see somebody that we don't think is balanced, we have not only an ethical but a legal obligation, practically, to say, yo, there's something wrong with this guy. And you have a lot of psychiatrists, people in the mental health field, who are saying that there's something wrong with Donald Trump. So what I'm getting ready to say is that, okay, Trump should feel ashamed of himself for what I'm about to say. But then again, are we even sure that Trump understands the concept of shame? I mean, does he get it? Does he understand that his selection by the Electoral College that put him in the White House is a source of glee, a source of joy, a source of happiness for groups like the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazi Party? Not just here, but throughout the Western world. Oh, yeah. I found that out the first time I went in the service, and I was in Germany. And I used to see these guys with their papa and what have you. No, papa is not bad in and of itself. But you saw some of the rallies that they were trying to hold on the down low. Okay, former Gestapo types, all right? A few years later, when I joined the Navy and wound up being an intelligence technician, I had the chance to study just what the hell was going on. And Germany is cool. It's very cool. But there is an active Nazi movement in Germany, in Austria, in France, in Belgium. The good thing is that is not the majority of the population. The bad thing is that because of some of the economic upheavals from like 08 and 09, you had a lot of economic discontent. And we always have to keep in mind that economic discontent is a breeding ground for not just left-wing, but especially right-wing groups. That's how Hitler and Mussolini, guys like that, that's how they got their start in the first place. And then they combine with those, how would you say it, original racist, okay? For example, in Germany, you had a lot of this mysticism, Nordic superiority, okay? That sort of thing. From, for example, Wagner. Oh, Wagner was a great composer, like The Ring. Oh, magnificent music. But he was a goddamn racist. And anti-Semites you wouldn't believe. And this was way before Hitler. We're talking, 1870s, 1880s? This goes way back. And when times get hard, there's always this appeal to go back, to go backwards. Ever notice that? When things are bad, you always got some clowns coming up there trying to get people to look backwards. Not as a source of encouragement, but this idea that you lost something or you left something back there that you need to pick up now in the present times. Just like what was Trump's big thing, right? Make America great again. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell that's all about. Because when you talk about making America great, is that before or after we abolish slavery? Because, you ask the average, I call them Trumpers, okay? You ask the average person supporting Donald Trump, hey, what are you talking about? When? Make America great, when was that? They can't answer you. They'll give you that, I call it that deer in the headlight look. But they can't answer you. Because they really don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's just something that appeals, and I hate to say it, but it's something that appeals to the negative aspect of their culture, or excuse me, of their character. America, there's no special time when America was great. America has always been America. We've done some great things in this country, and unfortunately, we have done some disastrous, mean, hateful things in this country. Right now on, what is it? I think it's HBO. I think it was HBO. They're running that show, that movie, Rosewood. A whole section of a Florida town was burned down behind a lie. The lie being that a black man assaulted and sexually assaulted and physically assaulted a white woman, a married white woman. A married white lady that was playing around on her husband. And the guy that she was playing around with beat her butt one day. And so what did she do? Well, I guess she just didn't feel right telling her husband, dear, the guy that I'm screwing around with behind your back whipped my ass. No, so what did she do? She went and, look, this black guy from the black town did this to me. And what really bothers me, this shows you, we talk about character. The sheriff of that town, he had a suspicion that that wasn't the case. But I guess he figured it was something that once you started, you had to continue. And they literally, they wiped out almost the whole town. Wiped out almost all the black people in that town. This was about, I think, what was it, 1921, 22. And the hero was his brother, who had fought with the, I think, the Fighting 69th Black Regiment out of Harlem. And it's a good movie. You ought to see it. It will make you very sad. But that's a part of history. And, it's funny. The folks in those red states especially, for some reason now, with Donald Trump in the White House, they want to keep their Confederate statues and all this good stuff, talking about it's not hate, but our culture. And that's such a load of crap, to be quite frank about it. Because the things that you hold as monuments, right? that tells the world who you are as a country, as people. And Trump is responsible for bringing a lot of this madness out. Don't, however, get it twisted. Donald is a symptom of the disease. He is not the disease itself. And we always have to keep that in mind, right? He is a symptom of what this country refuses to deal with. Some people call it the original sin. Yeah, I guess you could call it that, but it's a little bit deeper, I think. We have such a disrespect for history in this country. And we have that disrespect towards history, not just with our own country, but when it comes to dealing with everyone else. And, that's one of the main reasons why, unfortunately, we have young people coming back, and some middle-aged people coming back in body bags from duty overseas in various places, because we don't take the time to understand the history of the culture. And we basically go stumbling into places with our own concept of what needs to be done. And the people in that country, they see it differently. So you have a clash. That's what Vietnam is all about. This business in the Middle East, it's ridiculous. We have no more business being in Afghanistan than, I don't know, than a bunny rabbit has working on a computer. Now, let me show up to work tomorrow, and there's a big rabbit working on this damn computers. But you get the point of what I'm trying to say. The part of that, a large part of that, see, that's that racism, because you haven't yet come to terms with how you did Native Americans, how you did African Americans, how you have treated our Hispanic brethren, how in the Southwest, when you needed them, right? Well, first of all, as far as the Southwest goes, I mean, you literally stole that territory. New Mexico, Arizona, California, Colorado, all that. If you want to go by the rules of that time, you stole that. It's just like the guy said in the movie. Your ancestors didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on you with both feet. Because what you talk about with, and I hate to use that term illegal. As a matter of fact, I won't use it. Human beings are not illegal. Okay? Commodities can be illegal. People are not commodities. But those people from Mexico who you accuse of sneaking through the border, coming through the desert, all that, a lot of those are ancient pathways. The Native Americans, okay, the original inhabitants were using those pathways thousands of years ago until, quote unquote, America got there. All right? So this whole business about somebody being illegal, my God, man, they're our neighbors. We need to treat those people as such. We don't treat Canadians like that, and you have plenty of Canadians that come over here. As a matter of fact, especially if you are a person with high school diploma or above, you have more to fear from a Canadian in terms of job competition than you do from people coming up from Mexico. A lot of those people, all they want to do is come up and work on your lawn, and you're going to persecute them. And that's ridiculous. That's not what this country is supposed to stand for. You know, it's just, that is something that, I mean, it tears my heart out. It truly does. And it should tear the heart out of every decent American. Just like this business about he's going to basically let Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, leave them out there to hang. And see, that's an example of Trump and his racist mentality. We can kind of tie some of this all together. Trump tries to accuse Obama of not calling the homes of service people killed in action, right? He tries to impugn the patriotism of the black and of the black players who take the knee. This is a guy who, during the height of Vietnam, he said he was a star high school athlete, but yet 5 times he managed to get medical deferments. Why? Because he had a little thing, a little tutu in his foot. His little footies. Had a little like a heel spur or some crap like that. I've seen guys operate with, busted leg, broken ankles. That's bullshit, to be quite frank about it. Yet, he is going to impugn the patriotism of these men, I would say the majority of whom have someone in the family that's either serving overseas, has served in the military. You get the picture. And yet he's going to sit up there and talk about someone's patriotism. Now this son of a bitch, just like he called my brothers, this son of a bitch is going to sit up there and say this crap. He was nothing but a no-good draft dodger. Him, I dump on. If he kept his mouth shut about that patriotism thing, I wouldn't throw that at him. But he wants to play hero. He wants to wrap himself in the flag. Well, guess what, buddy? You have no right touching that flag. You were a draft dodger. Your grandfather was a draft dodger. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you? His grandfather was a draft dodger from the German army back in the 1800s. Yeah. None of his kids have ever even touched the uniform. And yet he has the nerve to impugn someone's patriotism. The guy that sat up there and said that he didn't think that the most heroic American in this last 2 generations, as far as I'm concerned, and I definitely oppose much of his politics. But as a fellow Navy veteran, I tip my hat to him as a warrior, as a man that has guts. I'm talking about John McCain. He says, oh, well, I don't really see John McCain as a hero because he got captured. What in the hell? Will someone please tell me? What in the hell does Donald Trump have? What business does he have even talking about who or who ain't a hero? See, this is what cost the so-called evangelicals, these so-called super patriots in the red state. And it shows that their patriotism is nothing but it's a cover that they use for their bigotry. You claim to be so pro-American. You claim to love the country so much. You claim that for some odd reason, black folks, Hispanic folks, especially the real dark Hispanic people, they can't be, you don't see them as being patriots. Yet, this son of a bitch that you fought for to become our president, you sit up there and you want to talk about, oh, well, Trump is my leader. This guy sits up, tears down a real hero, McCain, tears down, remember that Islamic family and the Democratic Convention? Remember that young captain that was killed leading his men and got, saving the lives of his men? And because he happened to be of the Islamic faith, Donald Trump tears this guy down and had the nerve to make cracks about the guy's mom because she was still so upset she couldn't, she didn't want to speak. Oh, well, maybe because her husband wouldn't let her talk, wouldn't allow her to speak. And this is the guy that you're going to use to talk to me about patriotism? And then when somebody calls you for what you are, Mr. Evangelical, Mr. Red State Patriot, when someone calls you a bigoted phony, you get offended. Hey, don't get offended when people are calling it right, because that's right. That's what you are. You're a bigoted phony. As far as the flag thing goes, those brothers are not doing anything disrespectful. As a matter of fact, what they're doing is just the opposite. They're saying, hey, this flag, we're supposed to be a part of this. Why don't you do what that flag is supposed to stand for, what this flag is supposed to stand for? When people say that you're going to fight for your country, that's what they mean. When you're out there, freezing your butt off in the North Atlantic doing that damn Arctic patrol, that's what it means. When you're over there in the Middle East, fighting them damn sand fleas and taking the chance on getting your head blown off, that's what it stands for. When you're sailing in hostile waters, not knowing if you're going to get pinged the next minute or so, that's what it stands for. We fight for the right of those guys to take the knee. That's what it's all about. And if you want to talk about what it supposedly makes America so unique, that's supposed to be it. The right to protest. That's how this country came about. Through protest. That's what we're supposed to be about. This is America. That's what we do. And for anyone to say any different tells me that you are either a bigot or you are just plain stupid and didn't learn a goddamn thing when you were in school. And it's time that those of us that know the history of this country, it's time for us to start speaking out. It truly is. Just a little aside, by the way, one of the things that I have a problem with in terms of leadership coming from the so-called left, people of color, or people that purport to speak for people of color in this whole racial thing. Listen, people of color have been here, okay, for over 500 years. And it's time that we, especially like, well, let me clarify that. There were people here when Columbus got here, okay? Those people originally, in the beginning, because of the terrible treatment that they received, because of the, and I wanted to be kind of, a little delicate with this, because it was, oh God, the rape of a whole continent, actually two continents, because you're talking about South America and North America. We were all put together. So basically, Native American people, Hispanic people, African people, we began this country. I'm trying to also be as technically accurate as possible. But those three groups, okay, we began this country. Of course, the Native Americans being the first one, okay? With all three of us, we're the ones that started this country. Excuse me, we're the ones that started both of these continents. So I believe that those who would purport to take any leadership role, what they need to do, they need to speak from a position of, hey, this is my house, okay? You came over here, all right, but you found us here. I tell you what, on my mom's side, she was from Virginia. In her family, somewhere around 1680, 1690, okay? That's about as far back as, on her side, the family goes. Maybe a little bit longer, I have no idea. But around that time, sometime before the 1700s, on my dad's side, you have the conquistador, you have the Native American, you have the African slave. And that's right there in the Dominican Republic and the Virgin Islands. Okay? So we are a part of these two continents. Trump, well, his granddaddy snuck over here somewhere around 1890 something when he was running away from the army in Germany, okay? So at best you could say that, second, maybe third generation? So, and when you listen to his wife, and I'm not getting into this thing about talking about wives, but she kind of opened the door to that, the way that she tore down or tried to humiliate Barack Obama and that whole birther nonsense. But see, it's just the point I'm trying to make. You're not going to have me feeling like I'm taking something from you when I've been in this country. My blood has been in this country longer than you have. Now, as Americans, we should not even be playing that game. A guy that got his citizenship papers last Monday is just as much of a citizen as me, with my mom and her people going back over 400 years in America. Just as good a citizen as I am, or as that Caucasian gentleman. It doesn't make any, it's not supposed to make any difference. But don't play that game with me. Because if you're going to play that game with me, I am going to fight back. You have this clown, like, what's his name, Spencer, and this other guy, Bannon. I guess you could say that he is Trump's mentor, okay? And I'm also ashamed to say that he was a former naval officer. He didn't stay that long. I can see why. But this idea of white supremacy, the idea that nobody did anything in this country except white people. And I'm sorry, that's insane. When they talk about our history, our culture, what history? What culture? Because your history is a part of mine. Your culture is a part of mine. There is nothing that you have done in this country that I was not a part of. And see, that is what is so mystifying. And when I say mystifying in this sense, I'm talking about in the sense, how can people be so dumb? How in the hell are you going to talk about your culture, your history, like it's a separate thing? This whole business about removing the Confederate flag, removing statues, and you cry and scream that, oh, you're taking away our history, our culture. Well, no. Number one, aren't you a sorry bastard if you're going to tell me that the only thing worth commemorating, worth remembering about your history is the fact that your great so-and-so owned human beings as chattel? Because that's what those statues are all about. They're about slavery. Don't tell me heritage, not hate. Heritage of what? The heritage that your ancestors decided that they wanted to break up the Union. They decided that they wanted to commit treason. Okay. Why? Well, because the Union said no. This whole slavery thing, it has to stop. And mind you, it wasn't about the abolition of slavery. You know, the union had their hands were not clean in this business either. But what they were saying was that no, this business has to stop. So they weren't trying to abolish it. They were saying, listen, it can't go any further. It can be, you can keep it where it's at, but you're not going to be spreading this damn thing throughout the rest of the country, because by that time, we're trying to open up the West and all this other good stuff. And see, that's something else when we talk about American history and the need for Americans to really start to know and understand their history. People will say, oh, well, if they had just left the South alone, it would have died out. No, it wouldn't have died out. Because remember, they were talking about, in the South, they were trying to expand slavery. Not only in the United States, they were trying to buy Cuba, which was at that time, if I'm not mistaken, they were already practicing slavery. They wanted to take over Nicaragua. In other words, they wanted to essentially turn both the Northern America and Southern America into one big, happy plantation. Now, that's not me being a smart-ass left-winger. That's history. Okay? It's all there in black and white. That's what they would have tried to have slavery in Alaska if they thought they could, the climate would work in their favor. But that's what started the Civil War. And there's plenty of documentation that tells you that they wanted to expand slavery. And the North did not want that. So, you see, there's a whole lot to this business. When they talk about making America great again. And like I said at the beginning, I still haven't heard anybody tell me what year are we talking about. You want to go back to the 50s? Okay, fine. That means that you can only have two blacks on television or two black shows on TV. Nat King Cole, because they tried that for a while in the 50s, and you can have Amos and Andy. So you're saying you give us Amos and Andy and Nat King Cole, and what was the tax level at that time for corporations? What, 90%? Somewhere around there? Okay. Well, let's do it like that then. But now you equivocate. That makes you nervous. Okay. See, that's the problem. That's the problem. Using patriotic, supposedly patriotic slogans as a cover for what you really mean. You want to show that people of color are basically seen but not heard. You also want that for women, for the most part. Every so often you'll come across a professional woman, businesswoman. But generally speaking, women are in the kitchen with an apron on. And that's your idea of a healthy American society. And the fact that the world has changed really upsets you to no end. And see, that's the problem. That's what this whole thing is about. Well, we're letting you know. Time goes forward, doesn't go backwards. And history, life, those are things that we just have to get used to. listen, folks, pay attention to what's going on. Look, not only listen to what they say, but look at what they do. And when I say they, those who you put as your elected officials. Remember, this is your country. And you need to be aware of what's going on. So listen, great time talking with you, and I'll see you next week. This is Bob Gumbs with the Concerning Forum signing off. Oh, and by the way, we also come on YouTube and Facebook. And do me a favor, when you see me on YouTube, please, if you like the show, indicate that and subscribe to us, because we like to hear from you and we need your help. We're trying to create something here for the American people, for the average American. So help us out and subscribe and indicate whether or not you like the show. And you got my phone number up there. Let me know how you feel. Take care. See you next weekend.